Welcome to That's What She Pled, with attorneys Christina Goldberg and Julie Luhrsen from Luhrsen Goldberg, LLC, law powered by women. It's time to shake up the old standards of law and of business. Join these two witty, intelligent, and sassy female business owners who are taking their industry by storm, challenging stereotypes and shattering ceilings. These two are on a mission to educate, empower, and support not only their own clients, but other powerhouse female entrepreneurs. Come for a laugh and stay for the vibe as Julie and Christina hold nothing back and share the truth of what it is to be female attorneys and business owners through discussion of current events, original stories, and inspiring guests. Now, on to the show.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Today, it is Christy and me, yours truly, and yours truly. And we are kicking off 2023 with the top 23 ways you can protect yourself this year. And as long as we're focusing on 23, I did consult my numerology charts to understand the significance of the number 23. And I did want to share this with
this.
Christy in advance.
This makes me,
This is really up your alley, right?
It's so up my alley. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here are just a few nuggets. I find it a little contradictory, but nevertheless, I want to share. The number 23 is a sign from the angels. It also can be a message from the divine. It is associated with the planet Uranus. Okay, no jokes. people.
Planet?
Yeah,
Wait,
a planet.
I thought, didn't they take Uranus off the planetary list? Was it Uranus? No, it wasn't Uranus.
Okay, well, maybe this Google
I don't know. Never mind.
page I found is outdated. I don't know.
I don't even remember anymore. Okay, sorry.
Anyway, Uranus is known for eccentricity and unpredictability, which I'm like, that's not so great, at the beginning of a year. However, it also represents change. That's a good thing. Progress, innovation, and positive energy. So those, I feel like, definitely counterbalance the other sort of, I guess, known characteristics of Uranus, which is related to 23. See, this gets weird.
I love this. Wait, not
Yeah.
Uranus, Pluto. I was thinking Pluto. I'm sorry. They took Pluto off the planetary list. Uranus is safe.
Yes.
Everybody, Uranus is safe.
A kid's joke.
I have nothing.
Anyway, I think that's
Moving
probably
on.
enough on the number 23, and we should just jump in and start talking
That's
about.
so right up my alley. I know I didn't tell you the other night I had a dream. I won't tell you the number, but what I remember about the dream is that I've never been pulled over in my life, knock on wood, but I was pulled over for going a certain speed. And all I remember about the dream was, well, shoot, I was pulled over, but I was going XYZ. It was a 3-digit number. And I decided that number, it was just so bright. That's what I remembered from the dream. So I looked up the number and it said all of the things about everything that's happening in the beginning of this new year for me. So yes, I'm super into numerology. I love it.
Okay.
I digress. All right. Julie,
All right,
start
well,
us out. So
jump
we have
in.
some
So-
basics.
Yeah, we have basics, and these are things to help you. Hopefully, you won't actually find yourself needing any of these rules, but hey, the basics aren't anything new, aren't anything novel, but they're definitely worth repeating. Obviously, our number one top of the list recommendation is buckle up, people. They say that seatbelts save lives for a reason. The statistics really do show that by properly buckling up every time you get in the car, no matter how far or how short your drive is, really reduces the risk that you could be fatally injured should you unfortunately find yourself in a car accident. Like something like 45% of front seat passengers are saved by their seatbelts.
Mhm.
Oh, buckle
Aside from the
up.
fact that it's the law.
Well, it is the law, but it's a good
Yeah.
reason for the law.
Absolutely. Every
yeah.
time my mom gets into my car, in fact, because she was raised at a time in a generation where there either were none or it just that people didn't believe in that. Every time she gets in my car, I have to yell at her. Buckle
Really?
your
So-
seatbelt. Yeah.
Another sort of interesting family story. My stepfather was in the Virginia state legislature for a long time. And this, at one point, they were considering, requiring seatbelt use in Virginia. And constituents would call from time to time to register their thoughts. And invariably, the calls that came up about seatbelt use were always one of those random stories where, but for the fact that they were unbelted, something terrible would have happened to them. So they were
Mhm.
saved by the fact that they weren't wearing their
That they
seatbelt,
weren't belted. Yeah.
which, that's definitely, the exception. So
It happens. I had a case like that years at the very beginning of my career. I actually had a case like that where if my client had been wearing the seatbelt, it would have been far worse. So there are times. However,
statistically speaking,
correct. So
it's a
buckle
good
up. It's the
idea.
law.
Yeah.
It's the law. So number 2, again, another basic. We have about 5 basics here, but number 2, listen, pay attention to the road conditions, the weather conditions. In fact, just because the speed limit is posted as the speed limit doesn't actually make that safe. And there is a statute under Florida law that says that if the conditions outside don't make that speed limit safe, you can actually be ticketed. You can actually be found guilty of endangerment or reckless driving, even if you're going the speed limit, if it's, monsooning outside, or if the weather conditions don't allow for a safe condition going the speed limit. So just pay attention. Flow of traffic, road conditions. There's a ton of construction. Everybody knows, everybody in the country is moving here, and we are widening roads continually. And
in the
it seems
summertime,
daily we get those stories of people being hit by a driver. Ugh.
yeah.
Yeah.
We live in the Sunshine State, but we are blessed with, nearly daily thunderstorms throughout the summer months.
Mhm.
And
You set your watch by them for sure.
So, yeah. So the next one, again, pretty obvious. There are laws on the books about this, but nevertheless, people seem to think that multitasking behind the wheel is a good idea. In particular, doing things with their phone. And it's a big distraction. You're often physically, you're manipulating your phone. Your eyes are focused on your phone, and your head, your brain is more focused on what's going on your phone, which means you are not engaged with what's going on the road. And so accidents can happen. Like over 3,000 people were killed in 2020, according to National Highway Safety Transportation Administration statistics. And let's keep in mind, people, that 2020 was a year when we really were driving a lot less due to COVID.
Yeah, everybody was home.
Yeah. And in Florida, if you cause an accident and it's due to your cell phone being in your hand, being distracted by that phone, it's likely considered not just careless, but recklessness on your part. And so for Christy and me, if we have a case where the other driver who caused the accident was in fact distracted by their phone, we will make a motion at some point in the case to actually have punitive damages, seek punitive damages, because reckless behavior, opens the door to that. And the thing about punitive damages is that's on you. Your insurance company is never going to pay a dime. Those are, I guess, just practical economic reasons why you should put that phone away.
Yep. That exceeds negligence. That's right on to, exactly what you're doing, and you're intentionally endangering yourself and others.
Yep.
And unapologetically it's attorneys like us who will fight for our clients and push that sort of designation, the reckless designation, and the punitive damages. So don't don't drink and drive. Number 4, we all know don't drink and drive. I'm going to reference, we did a podcast a couple of, 2 or 3 episodes ago at this point, where also we pointed out, hey, drinking and driving is the same as drugs and driving. Even if you have a medical marijuana card, doesn't make it legal to drive while under the influence of marijuana. So let's make sure that stays. Drinking and driving, or being under the influence of drugs and driving, it's the cause of 32 fatal crashes every day, one every 45 minutes, according to the CDC. So it's a big deal. Don't do it. And don't be confused with, yes, but I can legally take marijuana versus.
Or even prescription medication. We've all seen those
Correct.
stickers, do not operate heavy machinery. That's not just a tractor, people.
Yep.
It's also a motor vehicle.
Right. And that's something we dig into as well when we have an at-fault party. Okay, what were you doing? What medication were you on?
Absolutely.
All of that. And if there is even the smallest thread that we can pull to say you are on a medication that your doctor told you shouldn't be driving on, that's a big deal.
Yep.
It's a big deal.
We will use it. And then the last sort of basic is make sure that you have proper insurance coverage in place. Honestly, I recommend every year or so just taking a look at what kind of insurance coverages you have in place, not just on your automobile, your home. If you don't own a home, your renter's insurance, you know, you want to be protected if, God forbid, you're injured in an accident, just as much as you want to be protected if, God forbid, you cause an accident that injures someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So Florida doesn't actually require drivers in general to carry liability coverage. And as a result, almost 1 in 4 drivers in our state is uninsured. So if you're in an accident, it's not your fault, you're injured, there's basically a 1 in 4 chance that the person who was responsible doesn't have appropriate coverage in place. And so that's why we really hammer repeatedly the importance of carrying not just liability coverage, but uninsured motorist coverage, because that provides you with some protection if, God forbid, you are in one of those accidents with somebody who doesn't have insurance.
Right. That conversation with a client is so difficult when they're genuinely injured, their lives have been changed, and they look at Julie and I and they say, so
this isn't fair.
There's nothing I can do. This is, I'm hit, I'm injured, and there's nothing. This isn't fair.
We don't make these rules. The Florida legislature does.
Yep.
It may change someday, but for now, that's not the case. And so that's why it's really important to, again, take a look at what kind of coverages you have and add honestly as much as you can afford and as much as you need. You know, obviously, if you have assets, you want to protect yourself in that economic way as well. So,
yep. So those are kind of the 5 basics that everybody knows, but absolutely worth repeating. Buckle up, pay attention to the conditions, don't text, don't drink and drive, and check your coverage, carry proper coverage. Moving on, number 6. So after a crash, if you've been hit by somebody, you've been involved in a crash, call the police. There's certainly circumstances where the police are backlogged. They can't get to you in time. In fact, a few years back, I was hit and ended up staying on scene for hours and hours. I mean, it's dark, it starts pouring rain, and then after it rains, the mosquitoes come out. It was terrible. And so by the end of it, rather than sit there any longer, I had done all of the other things that we're about to tell you to do as well. But after we'd been there for long enough, I actually called the police back, ensured that it was on a recorded line, and had the person who hit me admit liability on the recorded line to the police, so that at minimum, even though I didn't have a crash report, I had a recorded statement of liability from this person because I knew it was going to be an issue. I knew that they had an insurance company that was, out of Miami and sort of fly by night, was going to give me a difficult time, which indeed they did for the next number of months. Yeah. So call the police, make a record. And if for whatever reason they can't get there, you always have that option. Call the police back on a recorded line. And if you've got someone there who's willing to say, yeah, I did it, then do that and move along.
And just, I guess, as sort of a corollary point, 911 calls are recorded. So, as a matter of practice, whenever we have a car accident case, we're getting a copy of not only the police report, but also the calls, the audio and calls, because sometimes there's some juicy information in those
Absolutely.
calls.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next one. This is a picture paints 1,000 words. We all have those cell phones, right? So we have a camera in our hand all the time. And so it's important to take pictures of the scene of where your accident takes place, take pictures of damage to vehicles or whatever. And of course, if you have physical injuries, bruising, wounds and things like that, take pictures of those, because oftentimes I'll plop a picture into my settlement negotiation letters and whatnot. And that speaks volumes over what I could put together with words. So
the debris all over the road, or you bleeding at the scene. And it's easy to lose your head. When I was hit, I called Julie and said, just make sure, go through with me, make sure I'm doing everything.
It's good to have an attorney on speed dial.
It is. It is. Be your own investigator. One of the most helpful things, especially if it's a pretty clear rear end crash or something where there's very little
room to argue,
very little opportunity for someone to say, no, that wasn't my fault. Although they find ways. Ask any witnesses who stop, bystanders, ask them for not only a statement, but their name, their info, their contact information. So many times we'll have people come to us and say, oh gosh, I did talk to somebody, but I didn't get their name.
Right.
Well, if the police don't happen to talk to them and get their contact info, then there's no way for us to. So anybody who's there, get information. Just think along the lines of no good deed goes unpunished. And sometimes in trying to be nice and not disturb people or disrupt people's lives, we just sort of let it go. But don't be your own investigator. Do things that we're not there to do at that point. So a lot of times evidence can disappear or information can disappear. So help us help you.
And let me just add, if you happen to get hurt inside of a store, there's a trip and fall or something like that. I call those a premises case. It's not an automobile accident case. It is very important to try to gather and get that information. The store manager or someone like that may come up and seemingly be taking down all this information. But unlike the police, who are independent third parties, they are not going to share that with you or with us as your attorney, most likely. They might in the course of a lawsuit, but by then we don't know what we need to know to decide whether we have a case. What is this witness going to say? So if just try to remember, take pictures of the scene and gather all those details about bystanders who may have seen what happened and that sort of thing, so that we can properly look into what happened. Yep. The other really, I think, obvious thing is if you're hurt, then go to the doctors, go to the emergency room, or oftentimes it's more appropriate to go to perhaps an urgent care center.
Right. A walk-in.
If you're really, really hurt, then emergency room is appropriate. But sometimes in the emergency room, they're doing a whole bunch of sort of scans and whatnot just to make sure that there's not something going on. They may not really suspect that, but they're just sort of covering themselves. And so what happens, especially with respect to auto accident cases where you do have insurance benefits that will help pay for medical care, it all gets used up in the emergency room visit. I'm not discouraging anybody from going to the emergency room, but urgent care may be actually the better place to start in cases where your injuries aren't as serious as I guess they could be.
Right. Well, or immediately ascertainable, because that soft tissue injuries, or what the term that people throw around as soft tissue injuries, those are serious
or whiplash.
Injuries. Yeah, those are serious injuries, but you're not bleeding out, and you don't have, bones sticking through your skin. You don't have something that really would require you to be at the emergency room. You're going to end up with, at minimum, 3 bills. One from the hospital, one from the ER physician, and one from the radiologist. They're going to do 3 CT scans at $7,000 a piece. And it's a very quick way to use all of your available auto PIP benefits. But the point is, yes, get treatment. There's a rule in Florida. If you don't seek treatment within 14 days from the date of the crash, you are not entitled to the PIP coverage that is mandatory that you pay for. Yep. So make sure that you follow up somewhere, somehow, certainly within 14 days. And there are an awful lot of people, more men than women, but there are an awful lot of people who say, I just, I'm okay, I'm sore, but I'm just going to give it a minute. And before you know it, 2 weeks is over. You're still sore. You've decided it's fine. I have work to do. And then you lose access to those benefits. So don't wait. At a minimum, just go somewhere, get checked out.
I just talked to someone this morning. It had been 17 days and she had been wanting to do something, but had yet to. So unfortunately, she lost $10,000 worth of coverage that could have been used.
Yep. And your carrier is not going to automatically share that information with you when you call and report a claim. They're not going to say, oh, please let us pay you that $10,000, or please let us pay that $10,000 on your behalf to your medical providers. So make sure you get treatment. They're not going to tell you. They're not.
Right.
Yeah. What number are we on? Oh, it's number 10. We're almost halfway. Talk to an attorney. There is literally no downside. Personal injury attorneys in Florida are contingency fee based. There is not a personal injury attorney I have ever met in Florida who does not allow a free consultation. There's literally no reason for you not to speak with an attorney, even if it is just getting questions answered and having a better idea about the coverages available and what your rights are.
Yep.
It's free. It's easy. If you call our office, we're pretty much available. We'll get you on the calendar and move forward. And at least,
and
that way
we're
you've
happy
got
to do it.
information.
Even if it's not really a case or a problem, it's just, we do that regularly, all
we
the
talk
time.
to people all the time that we have we don't practice that. We really can't help, or the defensive, they were involved in a crash, but they were the at-fault party. We talk to people all the time and attempt to offer guidance and refer if we can.
And insight.
Yeah. But sometimes, knowledge, not sometimes, but always, knowledge is power. So talk to an attorney.
And so the next piece of advice is sort of a follow-on or predicate is, do not, on the other hand, talk to your insurance company. Hold off. Talk to an injury attorney first. My advice for all my clients is, we're not going to talk unless I'm supervising and under, my parameters and that kind of thing. You hire me to be your mouthpiece. And so if we don't have to, we're not gonna. And if we have to, then we're going to do it, but under controlled circumstances. So wait, there's no, it can wait. It can certainly wait until after you talk to Christy or me.
Oh yeah. The controlled circumstances part is super important with that, because they'll ask stuff that they have no business asking. It's a problem. Which leads into actually number 12, which is, do not assume that your insurance company is your friend. We can almost always, it's logical, right, to assume that the insurance carrier for the person who hit you is not your friend. It's sort of, that's a very logical thought. Your own insurance company, however, people think, well, I pay them my premiums. I'm loyal to them. They'll be loyal to me. They're not your friend. Insurance companies are insurance companies, and they are in the business to make money, not to spend it. So your insurance company is not going to give you all of the information that you need. And furthermore, they are going to send you things in the mail. They are going to just pepper you with all sorts of paperwork that is, hey, please sign this document. And this allows us to get all of your medical records from the day you were born until the day we choose not to collect them anymore. We want all of this information. Why do you need to be giving that to your auto insurance company? Under any circumstance? You don't. But that's what they do, is they send you all of these forms under the guise of, we're your friend, let us help you. And you sign them, you send them back. And before you know it, you've got an insurance company telling you, well, you're not hurt. You were hurt 12 years ago in another crash, and this is related. It's awful. So do not assume your insurance company is your friend. Don't sign anything. Don't do anything, again, until you talk to a lawyer. Hey, sorry for the interruption. I know you're listening to the That's What She Pled podcast, and I am so happy you're here. If you have any questions, please head over to lawpoweredbywomen.com or look in the show notes to find out how to reach us. We would love to hear from you.
The next one about what happens with your property, your car. You basically have two potential avenues of relief after a car accident when it's not your fault. You can look to the other driver. He or she is required to carry coverage that will pay for property damages, either to get your car repaired, or if it can't be repaired, to pay you your car's fair market value. Your second route, and this is not necessarily available to everybody. It really depends on whether or not you carry what's called collision coverage, which is not a mandatory coverage in Florida. It's optional. It's important to have, I think, again, if you have a newer car, but you can go through your own insurance, and it's oftentimes easier, quicker. It doesn't involve a determination about fault. They'll get your car in to be repaired or what have you. The only downside is collision carries a deductible. And so the first $250 to $1,000, typically you're going to have to come out of pocket to cover, and then your insurance kicks in to pay the rest. Ultimately, when you weren't at fault of the accident, your insurance company will get reimbursed by the other guy's insurance and then turn around and reimburse you your deductible. But that part you're going to have to wait typically a bit for. Right. So yeah, that's in a nutshell how you get your car fixed or taken care of.
Yeah. And understand that Florida law, although it requires property damage coverage, it's minimal. It's $10,000.
Yeah.
So if you're driving a car that's even within the past 5 years old at this point, especially with car values, and it gets totaled, the likelihood that the at-fault carrier, if they carry the minimal property damage coverage, is going to be able to pay you for your vehicle is very, very low. So make sure, again, when you're reviewing your policy, to make sure that you carry proper coverage. The collision is one of those. Now, I believe you can elect not to have a deductible. Of course, the premium would be higher to do that. But just keep in mind, there really is nothing wrong with going through your own insurance company to get your property fixed. You're paying for that collision coverage. A lot of people have it stomp the foot. Well, I didn't do this and I'm not having my insurance company pay. Well, okay, but you're costing yourself time and potentially money.
Yes.
And also keeping in mind, if your car is if your car is totaled rather than needs to be fixed, if your car is totaled, offers on that from both the at-fault carrier and your own carrier, offers on that are negotiable.
Yes.
So
do your homework.
Yeah. Do your homework. Arm yourself with information, especially if you've got aftermarket parts. They have no reason to know. You can negotiate on that total loss offer, and they have to offer you the fair market value, meaning if you decided to leave that day, instead of getting into a crash, you left your house and you were going to sell your car to another buyer and it was in perfect condition, that's the amount that they have to give you. It's not the amount that you would collect under duress, or it's not the amount that it has nothing to do with anything other than they have to give you the amount that you would sell, person A would sell to person B for under no duress. So keep that in mind as well. Number 14, it happens if you're wrongfully cited for a crash, fight your ticket. We actually can provide information for attorneys who will help fight tickets, and now and then
we'll actually do it.
We'll do it, right? So we actually sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not, and it really is going to depend. There can be all sorts of circumstances. A lot of times actually the more difficult situation is where nobody is ticketed.
Right.
And so then you've got insurance companies that pretend to be investigators doing their own investigation about who was at fault for the crash.
Pointing the fingers just for the sake of getting it out of there.
Exactly. And that's where our job comes in. Oh, that's funny. Actually, I had a client that I'm staring at her file right now. We just dispersed. I've got her check sitting right here. Went to another attorney before she came to us. Nobody was ticketed for the crash. The other attorney decided it was too much effort because there was no ticket. Let her go. She came to me, and I just got a tender from the at-fault party on the file because I went in. We're talking Google Earth, and we're talking investigation about, wait a minute, if so-and-so hit so-and-so, this person was already through the intersection, which means that person had the last chance to stop. I mean, the whole thing. That's kind of fun for us, actually, when it's not quite so
clear
cut and dried. Yeah.
Right.
Clear cut. But just a small tangent. If you're wrongfully cited for the crash, fight your ticket.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was this a DUI? Let's say, you're in an accident and the other driver is also cited for drunk driving. You actually have rights. You have your civil case that we handle. That's the case against the other driver or against the insurance companies to try to get compensation for your injuries. Mm-hmm. But simultaneously, the state will be prosecuting that driver for committing a DUI, which is a crime. Mm-hmm. And when there's property damage, it's a more serious crime than if there isn't property damage. And when there's an injury, it's an even more serious situation, and so on. Obviously, if it's a fatality, it's really bad. That sounded awfully glib. It's bad. But as somebody who's been hit by a drunk driver, you also are a crime victim now, just as, somebody who gets robbed is a crime victim. Yep. And in the state of Florida, we have a victims compensation fund set up through the state that you can apply to help cover some of your costs that aren't otherwise going to be covered. So it's not always a lot of money, but it is another source of payment to you. Right. And we help all our clients who have been victims of DUIs, also hit and run is another example of a kind of accident that also involves a crime.
Correct.
And then there's some corollary things that fall out of that. The state says that deductibles, to the extent that there are deductibles, are waived in this situation. You also have rights with respect to the actual case being prosecuted against the drunk driver. And as we've already mentioned earlier, your case then becomes one in which we will try to pursue punitive damages, or at least use the threat of punitive damages to your advantage in seeking a resolution of your civil claim. Another good reason to talk to a personal injury attorney, if you've been in an accident and you're the victim of a crime,
Yes,
will help you navigate that as well.
right. And you have no reason to know all of this. That's what we're here for. And if we weren't necessary, we wouldn't be here. And it's the sad truth. But so those are sort of the things that after a crash, as the not at fault party, we would recommend that you do. And a lot of it is arm yourself with information. If you, however, cause a crash, there are a few extra additional or different steps that we felt like we should express here. So a lot of what we just talked about applies here. Call the police, document, be your own investigator, make sure you get checked if you are hurt. So understand that your $10,000 in mandatory PIP coverage, personal injury protection, applies regardless of fault. That's why it's called no fault insurance.
Right.
We are a no fault state. That creates so much confusion with everybody. Our clients, they come in and say, yeah, but it doesn't matter who is at fault. No, it matters. It simply doesn't matter for purposes of that one bucket of coverage through your auto policy that is required. So even if you go out and you slam your car into somebody else, you are entitled to up to $10,000 in your own personal injury protection coverage, and you are subject to the same limitations and drawback of there's a 14-day rule. You have to go seek treatment within 14 days to have access to that coverage. So keep that in mind. But step number 1, we're at number 16 now. Carry liability coverage. This is what will protect your individual assets. Julie referenced earlier, it is not required under Florida law. That may change. The legislature for a number of years now has been trying to get that to change. And in fact, they passed it last session, correct? Year ago?
Or 2 years ago.
I can't remember, but it was vetoed. The governor
Right.
did veto it. There was not enough research done on the impact, the financial impact that this would have on Florida
Insurance,
on insurance rates and Florida residents. But carry liability coverage, because if you don't, you are opening yourself and your assets up to the potential for judgment. And it's interesting. I actually just came across an article in the Florida Bar Journal, something that they're pushing now. How can we really pursue judgment collection? Let's find ways. So we all know homestead is safe, but otherwise it seems like there's maybe a little bit more of a push,
right,
to try to collect on judgment. So carry liability coverage. Be a responsible driver. There is a financial responsibility law. There is a statute that says that if you cause damages and you're not able to be financially responsible for them, technically your license can be taken from suspended to revoked. So just keep that in mind. Carry liability coverage and make sure you protect yourself, because really that's what it's about. Yes, it protects other people on the road, but it's about protecting your own assets.
It is. All right, the next one. You're going to have to talk to your insurance company at some point, and they're going to want to know what happens. Generally speaking, we advise clients not to say anything, not to admit anything. But if, on the other hand, there's really not an explanation for why this happened other than that you did something careless.
Yeah.
It actually may be really in your interest to go ahead and own it with your insurance company and get them in the business of then trying to protect you by getting as quick a resolution for as little money as possible, taken care of. In cases where it's pretty clear, there's nothing to argue. You need to tell your insurance company, you need to protect me. They have a fiduciary obligation to you, but that doesn't mean they always get it right. And they do sometimes screw it up, and that can open up a huge can of worms in terms of your exposure. So if you put them on notice that you expect them to protect you because you did, in fact, run that red light and T-bone that person and they are hurt and they screw it up, then that changes the legal terrain in a way that's helpful to you, notwithstanding the fact that, yeah, you caused an accident and somebody was at fault. Now, if you were drunk or something like that and you face criminal exposure, then to quote, is it a podcast that these
it's
guys
attorneys. They're out of Miami, but they're on TikTok is where I saw it the first time.
That's right. They're big TikTokers.
Yeah.
And their hashtag, and we can say this because this is
yes, we can say this. We're adults here.
Hashtag STFU. Shut the fuck up, people.
Yeah.
You have constitutional rights. So invoke them.
Don't incriminate yourself. Right.
Ask for an attorney, stay silent, and then with your attorney decide how to navigate that. But yeah.
Right. And we're talking about the bigger criminal issues here that might have caused you to slam your vehicle into somebody else. But
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's fun for us litigating files where you have a defendant who clearly is at fault for a crash. Clearly. And before a deposition, their attorney has failed to properly prepare them for the deposition because they come in and rather than saying, yeah, I hit your client, it was my fault. They come in and they say, well, I don't think it was my fault. Well, whose fault was it? Well, I don't know. Was it my client's fault? Maybe. My client was at a dead stop and you slammed your vehicle into the rear end of whose fault was this? Well, I don't think it was mine. Okay. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun for us, but it also makes you look stupid. Makes your insurance company look stupid. It makes your insurance company's attorney look stupid.
Yep. But
so yeah, I mean, it can come down to an ethical issue, but is it worth to admit or not to admit? I mean, it's a call you've got to make.
Isn't that what Hamlet said? Oh no.
Probably. So number 18, and this is kind of following along the lines of report the crash to your insurance company. So if you have caused a crash, you need to report it to your insurance company because there is going to be a clause in your insurance policy that says that there is a timely reporting requirement. If you do not timely report this to your insurance carrier, in theory, they could say
you're not being cooperative.
Right. You breached contract. You did not timely report this. And so we now do not have an obligation to cover it at all.
And protect you.
Correct. So if you are at fault for a crash, you need to report the crash to your insurance company. You need to let them know that it happened if you want them to step up and help you.
And oh, by the way, if you haven't yet gotten the opportunity to report it, there's a decent chance that the other party will go ahead and report it for you.
True. Wouldn't you rather be in control of the information given to your carrier? I would. Yeah.
Okay. So just some basics in terms of what an insurance company can or won't do for you. If you cause an accident and it's your fault, whether or not they're going to provide a defense for you, in other words, hire an attorney if need be, depends entirely on whether or not you carry liability coverage. If you don't carry liability coverage, you're on your own. If you carry liability coverage, but you actually have exposure over and above the amount of coverage that you have in place, you may also want to consider, especially if you actually have assets, hiring private counsel, paying them yourselves so that you are well protected. The insurance company is going to should be doing its best to try to get the case resolved within the amount of coverage you have, but that doesn't always happen for various reasons. And so you may want to have somebody else who's thinking sort of further out on your behalf.
So we've got 3 more. We have this down kind of into just some general closing thoughts. And we've hinted at this a number of times, but I think it cannot be overstated. Do an insurance audit. Pull your policies, meaning your auto, your homeowner's boat, any of that. Pull your policies and do an insurance audit. And keep in mind, coverage and price can be the drivers rather than loyalty. So there are some people who, I've been with XYZ company for 18 years,
30 years,
for 25 years, and I'm never. Well, that's a mistake because they know you're never moving. They're taking advantage of you and they're charging you too much money, or they're not offering you the extent of coverage for what you're paying. Yeah. So do an audit. I actually just this year I did, I'm 2023, baby. I'm doing my, trust and all new updated
Estate plan.
documents, estate planning and all of that. But part of that was additional life insurance and additional umbrella policy now that covers house and car and all of that. So do an audit. A lot of times it can be a lot cheaper than you might imagine.
Yes.
An umbrella policy was not expensive.
Nope.
Once I have the appropriate underlying coverage in place. So just take a minute to do an audit on that. Any financial planner is going to tell you, God forbid something happened to you. You need to make sure that you're protecting yourself. So please take the time to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And similarly, social media.
Mm-hmm. That's a biggie.
It's awesome to, share what's going on in your life with all of your friends.
The world.
But people do crazy, stupid things. And if an accident happens and either we or the other side, i.e. the insurance company, can glom onto something, they will. And I promise you, the insurance companies are figuring out as much as they can about you as possible. So public records, trying to check in and see if they can see what you put out there on TikTok or Facebook or whatever, and they will gather that and they will use it against you. Don't post while you're driving or doing stupid stunts, drunken idiocy, that kind of thing. It really isn't that funny.
I don't know. Technically, I fall into millennial. I vehemently object to that label, but I do fall into the millennial category. But the one after us, or my son is 15 and his age group, I mean, they were born holding technology. They were born holding phones.
They're digitally fluent.
And everything is online, and thank God for that, because would we have gotten into college, or would we have gotten jobs in the first place had we posted everything online like the kids do these days, and with beer and with weapons and with all of it? It's just a mess. So just don't, and talk to your kids about that as well. Finally, so to round it out, number 23, whether it is us or someone else, do not pick your attorney based on a billboard or a commercial. And we have both.
Yes, we
do.
We
advertise everywhere. We're all about it. We want to make sure that people know that we exist, but don't pick us based on any of that. Pick us because when you call, we're responsive. Pick us because when you need to sit down with us and talk, we're willing to give you as much time as you need to explain things and give you the information that you need. Pick us because
you'll meet with us.
Firm, right? Our firm, our ideology, our investment in our clients, it suits you, that you feel like you have a team. And this is going to apply to anyone, anywhere. Pick not just us, pick your attorney, because that person suits you and you have similar ethics, etc. So don't buy into all of the
size, whatever it is.
Right. Don't maybe
dig a little deeper.
Right. There are people who are in practice because we are people of service, and there are people who are in practice because there are dollar signs. And that doesn't mean that there isn't money to be made and we don't have to support our firm and our family, but there's going to be a big difference from attorney to attorney that it's palpable. You can feel it. Walk into the office and feel it. And if there's a connection, great. And if there's not, move along. So yeah, that's it. That's a lot of stuff we just talked about, but I think it was actually pretty helpful.
I do.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll wrap up where we started and wish everyone that the year 2023 is full of positive energy and progress and good change.
Pick your avatars. I haven't named my avatar yet. We did our podcast with Mary Schrank, who said, name your avatar. So name it. I've got to think about her name. We are Julie and Christy. We are Luhrsen Goldberg, Law Powered by Women, and you can find us at www.lawpoweredbywomen.com. Call us, text us, email us, leave us questions or reviews. I don't know. We have so many adoring fans. So, and we will catch you in a couple of weeks. Everybody have a great week.
Thank you for listening to That's What She Pled podcast. Don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and do not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Luhrsen Goldberg lawyers. The content has been made available for general informational and educational purposes only and may not constitute the most up-to-date legal or other information. The content is not intended to be a substitute for legal advice from your individual attorney, and the information provided does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice.